Peace be with you. As we get started, I just want to give a quick announcement reminder that we are working on our roof. And so starting Monday, we will have daily masses on Monday through Friday. We'll be downstairs in the hall. And so you can come in just through that corner entrance, just go down the double stairs through the side hall entrance. This other one with the ramp will be blocked off with lots of ladders and taking off of tiles and all that. So pretty much for the next 2 months, that'll be our main entrance for daily mass. And then we will, because there's other activities in the hall, and we're kind of sharing part of the hall with the preschool and the families as they come in and out to bring their kids to preschool. We won't have adoration after Mass because of those other activities, and therefore we won't have confessions on Friday mornings following Mass because there's no confessional down there. So we'll just have daily Mass though, and that just means you can't sin for 2 months. After that, we can come back to it. But the weekend masses, as we said last weekend, are the same. And as we've put in the bulletins and the newsletter emails, the weekend masses are the same. So this will be here in the church. Should all be cleaned up every time we come in. Just might be a little messy outside. So we will thank you for adjusting with us. As we jump into our gospel today, there's kind of a couple of things we can look at. We're seeing how, how Jesus interprets different scriptures in the Old Testament, and therefore how we can learn to interpret some of those. So, for example, every time Jesus quotes, like he says, "I desire mercy, not sacrifice," or when he uses a title from the Old Testament for himself, like the Son of Man, then those are full of Old Testament teachings and imageries and scriptures. And it's important at some time to go back and look up those. You know, if you have a decent Bible, it will have some kind of verses next to these words and phrases that refer you back to where they are found in the Old Testament. You can go back and read in the original context. And it's important to see how to read those and then see how Jesus is interpreting them for himself. Because all the Jews had different interpretations for these things, and then Jesus kind of came and reinterpreted it as well in a different way and connected it to himself. So that's the Christian way of interpreting, is the way that Jesus did. So we want to learn that and see how he used those terms and the different verses for himself. So that's one thing we'll see here today. The other one is, as he's doing that, he's revealing himself to them. And so we remember, for example, the Pharisees and even his disciples, they're discovering Jesus immersion style. You know, we are what they call Monday night quarterbacking. We're looking backwards and saying, oh yeah, it's so obvious. Jesus, Son of God, Messiah, duh, get on board. What's wrong with you guys? Why are you so slow to believe? But there it's discovering immersion style. And so that's actually very beautiful for us as we keep going over the scriptures every year, these same verses. As we come across them discovering who Jesus is, especially with different titles, we should let that hit us so we can rediscover or discover afresh Jesus and those original titles and who he is. It's just like when, you go through life and then, God willing, you get married and have children, and then you begin to discover life again through the children's eyes. And they're tasting steak for the first time. Oh my goodness, or salmon or whatever, or a French fry, and they're bouncing up and down. They're so happy to have a French fry, and they're seeing sunsets and they're seeing beauty and they're seeing the ocean and they touch the ocean. Everything they're experiencing for the first time, old news to us. But all of a sudden, it re-enlivens again because we get to see it now through their eyes. We want to do that with the scriptures. This might be old news to most of us, many of these passages. But as we read them and see how they're discovering Jesus and how Jesus is trying to open their eyes to see him and to understand God and God's plan in a fresh way, let it hit us again so we see it fresh, new through their eyes. That's how we want to read the scriptures. And so as we do that today in our passage, we first see Jesus, in some sense, teaching them would be Jesus' teaching on not judging. What we could call not prejudging, not judging without all the information. And in a sense, not judging, not being too quick to judge, but to give the benefit of the doubt until you understand the whole situation. Right? Because here's Jesus. They're going through a field on the Sabbath. His disciples are hungry. They begin picking the heads of the grain to eat them. That's called, according to the law, that the Pharisees say, that's called work. Extra work on the Sabbath, which is breaking the law, because you're supposed to be spending quiet time, alone time, family time, communion time with God on the Sabbath, because the Sabbath is the Lord's day. And so it's not our day to work. It's our day to commune with the Lord. Remember, the Sabbath day is the seventh day. That's the day God rested from all his work. The 7 means covenant, so it's the covenant day or the anniversary day between God and creation and their relationship. So it's every seventh day is an anniversary between God and all of his creation to do what you do in every anniversary. Renew the relationship, deepen the communion, deepen the love. And you can't do that if you're always at work. You got to stop, hang out with the family, have a special day, have a party. All that's supposed to take place on the Sabbath. The Sabbath is very interesting. If you read Genesis 1 and 2, the Sabbath is the only thing that God blessed and made holy. Everything else he said is good and he blessed. The Sabbath is the only thing he made holy, that he sanctified. You and I, he told us, be holy as I am holy. There's something we have to do to be holy in obedience with God. There's participation. There's a free will that we have to choose. The Sabbath he just made holy. So this is the Sabbath. They're doing work on the Sabbath, so it seems. But Jesus tells them, there's a couple, I don't want to say exceptions, they're not really exceptions to the rule or exceptions to the law, just that what they're doing is obeying a higher law that makes them innocent of the lower law. You could say, for example, let's say you're on the freeway and you're not breaking the law, you're going 65 or 60, but some guy jams past you going 90. You say, oh, lawbreaker, right? Well, what if that person, that car that went by you going 90, is black and white and has flashing lights on it, and it's a police car? Well, they're breaking the law, right? But they're also obeying a higher law, probably going to take care of something that needs taken care of, huh? So this is what Jesus is talking about in the gospel. These are not exceptions to the law of the Sabbath, but there's a higher law that nullifies or makes you innocent of the lower law. And that's what he's saying here. He gives 2 examples. Don't you see what David did in the scriptures when him and his companions ate the bread of offering that only the priest could eat? But if you go back and read that, David says, we are on a special mission of God. We are on a mission of God right now. And so his mission meant that it was a higher law. He's innocent of breaking the lower law. The same with the priests. They are working on the Sabbath in the church or in the temple. But they are innocent of that work because they're serving the temple and therefore serving the Lord of the temple. So there's a higher law they're obeying. So what Jesus is basically telling them, you should not have condemned these innocent men. Why? They were too quick to judge. They didn't know what's going on. They just see something, lawbreaker. They don't talk to them. They don't find out what's going on. They definitely don't know the heart. They don't know that they're on a higher mission right now, serving not the temple, serving the Lord himself, who Jesus says, the Lord of the Sabbath. So it's just a quick reminder for them. Don't be too quick to judge. Give people the benefit of the doubt till you find out the whole situation. Happens all the time. So next, we see this We've already talked about, maybe a week ago or two, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. But just look at what Jesus says here when he calls himself the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. Those are all powerful titles right there, that ring of divinity. The Son of Man is basically a messianic title from Daniel chapter 7 of a person like a man who will become king, enthroned as King of heaven and earth. That's a big title. And then to say that he is Lord of the Sabbath. If you are Lord of something, it's because you own it, you possess it. It's yours. You can do whatever you want with it. If Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath, he must have made the Sabbath. You can, and therefore he's higher than the Sabbath laws, you could say. Those are some of the identities we want to let sink in today. Son of Man, who is, we know already now, he's been risen from the dead, ascended to heaven, and has been enthroned as King of heaven and earth. And he's ruling, Jesus is ruling and reigning as King of heaven and earth in heaven through his people on earth. Through you, through me. He is Lord of the Sabbath. As we said, because he created the Sabbath. It's just like if you're married and you have an anniversary date, you're Lord of that anniversary date. You could do whatever you want that anniversary date, and if you really wanted to with your spouse and you guys discussed it, you could work on that day. And you could postpone your anniversary to another time. You're Lord of the anniversary. You make it. You say what happens on that day. That day doesn't rule you. You rule that day. And that's what Jesus is saying here. That day does not rule me. I rule this day. So as we said at the beginning, tying back around, these are some powerful titles and images that identify different different identities of Jesus. And you got to imagine, when he said this hit the Pharisees big time. Remember, he says here, there's something greater than the temple here. The temple was the one place where you could experience God on earth. And the Jews, the Israelites, were the only religion that claimed that. Every other pagan religion, their gods were up there somewhere in God's space, and they didn't really care what was going on down here. Unless they didn't get appeased enough, then they might come do a little smackdown. The Israelites were the only religion that said and taught, our God is not just big and up there, but he's also down here, personal. You can encounter him face to face in the temple. This is his place, his house where he comes. And we are his people. So for Jesus to say something greater than the temple is here, the one place on earth where God comes and dwells among men, and Jesus saying, there's something greater than that here. Whoo! This will rock the whole world. And we know, because he's saying, the temple is the one place where God comes and dwells, and I am the God that comes and dwells there. So clearly, I am the God who is greater than this temple. And that's what's amazing. As we continue to transition that into the New Testament, Paul tells us, don't you know your bodies are now the temple of the Holy Spirit, of God who dwells in you? You and I are walking, talking, temples of God. At the end of the Mass, we usually put that monstrance and put Jesus inside there, and that's you and I. We're that monstrance. We're the ones to show God. God is not only here in the Eucharist. When you receive the Eucharist, God is in you, and he just stays there. He stayed there ever since your first Eucharist. He doesn't leave after that. He's in you permanently. He moved in. And we have to get that in, because no wonder we're called to live holy lives, because inside of us is dwelling a holy God. And if we are not living holy lives, we're profaning the temple of God. If we can just get that, it'll rock our whole world, and then rock the world out there. Because we don't have to wait for and beg people to come here to experience God. That's why we can go to them. We're all called to be like Mother Teresa, and as Jesus told her, go be my light. Go out there into the darkness. I know it's dark, but you have a flashlight. Nobody else does. Go be my light. What am I going to do? Just sit there with the light. People will come to you. Just go love in little ways. People will come to you. Just go do the famous quote in the Old Testament, repeated over and over and over. Every time people said, God, I can't. What can I do? I can't do that. I'm so little. And God said, go with the strength you have. You have any strength? Go with that strength. All you can do is wiggle this little pinky. Go and wiggle the little pinky. Go with the strength you have. And then God can work through each of us, through that strength, and He can be strong. But if we don't go, He can't go. That's what we have to understand. God only works on earth through people. And if His people won't go and be His light, He can't work in that darkness. That's how powerful God is, that He has limited Himself to working through His people. The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath, and He lives in you and in me. And who will we bring Him to today?